Hello everybody, this is Tom from the UBR. The year is 1960. Manhattan is gone. America and Russia defeated. The Allied forces have lost the war. The future looks bleak, as now the world is under the control of the Third Reich. As Hitler maintains a firm hand over the known world, William Blaskowitz wakes up from a coma. Now, it is up to you to undo what the Nazis have done. Is this living up to the high bar set by Wolfenstein 3D over 20 years ago? Is it, quote, old school? Or is it just another forgettable attempt like the 2009 Wolfenstein? Here is the unbiased review of Wolfenstein: The New Order. The game opens up in 1946 in a battle over London. The plan is to attack the castle and kill a huge influence in the war, General Deathshed. Things soon go extremely awry, and after you kill one of your fellow inmates at the hands of Nazi subjugation, after being forced to, you take a piece of shrapnel to the head and wake up in the bleak 1960s. Throughout the story, you will interact with many characters that are actually really memorable. One thing I will say is definitely hard in a shooter. It's to make a story-driven experience from a first-person view about killing Nazis. This game collapsed my stereotype. From the romance with my caretaker in the asylum for 14 years, Anya, to General Deathshed, to many other characters you will meet, every one of them, while names will remain unknown and vague, you will remember their faces and personality for each and every one of them. The plot is very gripping, and while some arguably will see it as a corny what-if story, I saw it as a semi-plausible what-if scenario. Yeah, with the exception of those bad boys. Now, the gameplay. It centers around you, a man who self-professedly is great at shooting, killing, and strangling Nazis. It can be played one of three ways. The first is a running gun, similar to Wolfenstein 3D, where you run around dual-wielding guns and shooting anything that speaks German. The second is cover-based, how you get into cover using a single weapon and shoots at whatever speaks German. The third mode is stealth, where you use throwing knives, silenced pistols, and critical thinking to slit the throat or shoot anything that speaks German. All of them have their own retrospective strengths and weaknesses. I've had people complain about the difficulty. First off, your arguments are completely invalid. This game has not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 difficulty modes. I mean, come on, when the picture for one of the difficulty modes is William dressed like an infant with makeup on, you know that this mode is going to be a walk in the park. Me, I chose the I Am Death Incarnate mode, which is 4th up on the list. Above normal, but not impossible. It was really difficult, but nothing I couldn't handle after half an hour practice or learning the strategy of the current mech or enemy. Uber though, that mode seems like a death wish. Now my initial feeling when playing the opening, not even words can express it. It had me gripped from the very beginning. The game is different from most shooters in a few ways. Number 1, you don't regain health. Instead, you only regain to the nearest 20%. For example, if your health is at 14, you're only going to regenerate to 20. If your health is at 64, you're only going to 80. The rest require pickups from crates in the environment around you. This, to an extent, involves more strategy than just run, gun, get behind cover until your health goes back to 100. Caught in battlefield. To an extent, you decide whether or not to run and gun or go cover-based, and it also encourages you to explore and enjoy the vastly detailed world that Machine Games developers make you. Also, that leads me to my next point. The atmosphere and game itself is amazing. The environments are well detailed, with news articles on the wall about Nazi victories scattered everywhere, as well as Nazi banter, secret rooms behind paintings. They've got everything in this game. The world looks beautiful on PS4 and Xbox One, with the greatest attention to detail that any game with Bethesda's name on the box is expected to uphold, and have. Fortunately, this game is no exception. Now, I was afraid they were going to nerf the Nazis for sake of a better term. Many people might take offense to the portrayal of Nazis being so evil, which is understandable, and in fact the original Wolfenstein went under massive scrutiny because of it. It even got the game banned in Germany, for those of you who don't know. To an extent, games like the 2009 Wolfenstein had them nerfed, or having plots that wouldn't make sense for the Nazis of the time. This game, though, it blew me away. My personal favorite level is one that was completely stealth and incognito-centered, where you went undercover in a Nazi concentration camp of the 1960s, and saw firsthand the horrors they committed. Everything from the intimidating robots in the camp to the camp commander demeaning the detainees from calling them nothing but scum that must be eradicated. Or the beds that they slept in and how claustrophobic the quarters were. Or when I was in a crowd about to be sent off for their final shower, it was horrifying and it made me sick. But that's a good thing. I mean, yes, while there's arguably no realism in a game that centers around killing Nazis and mechs, there's something about this game that, other than the whole mech thing, makes it seem believable. Maybe it's just the execution, but I can buy the world that they're in, and it makes for an intriguingly horrifying experience. And it's something that sadly cannot be said for most shooter games I see today. Sure, Battlefield 4 and Call of Duty Ghosts may be fun for their respective audiences, but I can guarantee you that their single-player modes are not that intriguing, and neither are the multiplayer. What I'm trying to say is you don't feel like you are that character in the TV. Wolfenstein does a great job at doing it in this game. Now, I do always bring up violence to an extent in these games, and this game is doubly violent. I warn all of you with weak of stomach, notice that there's no pun this time, that the gore scale, Naughty Bear being a 1 and Mortal Kombat being a 10, you're looking at an 11. This game is not for the weak of stomach. You take off a Nazi's head with a chainsaw, see the smoke coming from the towers of concentration camps, the violent scenes have more blood spurts than I've ever seen before. I'm all for it. Just consider this as a warning for those of you weak of stomach. I mean, when you go into one of the Nazis' medical experimentation rooms and you see their skin peeled back, exposing all of their muscle tissue, or the people that have died horrible deaths just thrown in a pile at the bottom of a concentration camp infirmary, some of these things do make you really sick, and some of it was even a bit too much for me to handle at times. Now, my first con. This game makes you be forced to use certain mechanics. While yes, these three options are available in most scenarios of stealth, cover-based, or run and gun, certain areas it forces you to use a certain type of that strategy. For example, in a relatively early mission, about maybe a third way through the game, you have to sneak into a Nazi hangar and steal helicopters. At the beginning of the level, it forces you to have an overblown fight with Nazis in a lobby. About 50 Nazis, if I remember. Yes, it was fun, but sometimes the straightforwardness became too much to handle. The game has a built-in weapon reel that's real-time though, so in a sense it makes you smart, and I was able to make the best out of my scenario, rather than being outgunned in a scenario where I wanted to use stealth. There isn't that much else to say about this game, really. I mean, in short, it's a modern-day masterpiece. Sure, like all games, it has its faults, but they detracted so little from the experience that it made me sad to leave the horrifying world I was in for the 17 hours it took me to complete what could have been done in the 12 hours on easiest difficulty. That's not to mention the replayability with a certain choice you make in the beginning of the game, which will result in having a different supporting cast later on. You know, it's that moment where you feel all hope is lost, but it's hard to hit. Most video games don't have difficulty or consequence. When you're running out of ammo and you're only at 20% health with no med packs left, and a giant mech is shooting at you with giant lasers ripping apart holes in the wall as you're just gasping at those final breaths of air, begging that a checkpoint saved you. That is how it feels during these boss battles, and it feels badass when the stealth segments come in, where I have to take out a commander without being spotted under the threat of him calling in reinforcements. The atmosphere was amazing in this game, and so was the chemistry between the non-sadistic characters in the game. However, I will say that every single Nazi is the devil incarnate. You want to kill these people, and when you see some of the things that you do to these Nazis, such as maybe drowning one in his own piss, you don't feel guilty afterwards. I loved every moment of my experience in Wolfenstein, which is something I haven't felt in a shooter ever since Star Wars Battlefront 2. The game sucked me in, and thank God I did not start playing this when I had school and obligations, or else this game would have consumed my life. I give Wolfenstein: The New Order a 9 out of 10. Sure, it does have its faults, that's beyond denying, but in my unbiased opinion, don't buy it on previous gen, but rather current gen, so as to get the most out of this fun cover-based stealth shooting, run-and-gun, mech fighting, Nazi-killing game. There is no way that you can go wrong with this game. I promise you, it has so much variety that it can appeal to a lot of audiences, which makes things even great in a game. I've heard people compare about it and complain, like Gligar. Gligar13vids said that the so much variety was a bad thing. This is a linear Skyrim. I know it's a very liberal example, but you are able to take so many different paths on these things that you can stealth this generally, you can shoot them from behind cover, you can run in dual-wielding shotguns and mutilate the hell out of them. It's all up to you, and that playstyle felt empowering, while at the same time never getting a breath of air. I mean, that's about it. This game is flat out amazing. Like I said, Wolfenstein: The New Order gets a 9 out of 10. And if any of you are looking for a good Easter egg to Wolfenstein 3D, just have a nightmare in your own bed at the hideout. Well guys, this is Tom from the UBR, and all of you have a good day and kill some Nazis.